Hey, everybody, it's Rebecca Johnson of Supergirl Radio. We will get started officially here in a little bit, but I wanted to go ahead and get the live stream started so that people could come in if they would like to join us. We are going to be discussing Season 1, Episode 2, Stronger Together. We've already discussed this on Supergirl Radio. I should say I have. Back in the Teresa Giacino era of Supergirl Radio. She was my co-host at the time, so if you want to hear some of my early thoughts when it aired, you can go back in time and listen to that episode of Supergirl Radio back in the day. But we will be discussing it again this week because Morgan Glennon didn't get a chance to talk about it then or on the podcast. So we're going to get her thoughts about what she thinks about Kara's struggle to find herself as Supergirl, what she thinks about the introduction to Maxwell Lord, what she thinks about Astra as a villain for the season, what she thinks about Cat Grant trying to get a Supergirl interview. Lots of things to ask Morgan about. I'm excited to hear her thoughts and what she thinks, because I was surprised on the rewatch. There were some things that sort of played in from my season 6 viewing, kind of played back into some things that happened in rewatching season 1, episode 2. So I wonder if she made some of those connections as well. So we'll have to get Morgan's thoughts on this episode. Also, if you are in the live chat and watching with us or watching the live stream while we discuss it, feel free to share your thoughts about what you thought about the episode and if maybe you made some connections from the end of the season and just what you think about the episode. Be curious to hear your thoughts. Also, if you have any questions while we are waiting to get started, if you have any questions about Supergirl stuff or podcast stuff or DC things, feel free to drop those in the live chat, and I'll get to those while we are hanging out. Let's see. We will next week. We'll be continuing our read through of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. We're going to try to get that finished here sometime this summer. We have issues 5, 6, 7, 8 left. And it looks like Morgan is in the live chat. Okay. We need to make sure that we get this get this together. That's why Morgan's not here, is because I did not send her the information that she needed. So I will do that, and we will get in here and get started. So give me a second. I'll get that for you, Morgan. And let me know if you have any trouble getting in. And let's see, what else can I catch up everybody on? Just want to update everybody because Lynn, who is one of our Supergirl Radio listeners, was asking me about it, if I was going to be going to Superman Celebration this year. And I do plan on going to Metropolis. So if anybody else is going to Metropolis this year for Superman Celebration, let me know. Maybe we can hang out, drink some kryptonite at Fat Ed's together. That would be really fun. I'm hoping to go track down the Supergirl Radio brick that we purchased to support the Super Museum. Yes, Sam asks if I'm going to Superman Celebration. Yes, I plan on making this an annual event. So if anybody ever wants to go, I will I'll probably be there. So I'm still debating, though, on whether or not to go to the Tom Welling, Michael Rosenbaum thing that costs a little bit of money. I probably will. I'll probably just talk myself into it. But I'm still sort of debating it. It seems like a lot of money for maybe some, I don't know. Maybe it'd be worth it. Maybe it'd be an experience to try. Cool. Sam says I'll be there with the Superboy cast members. Very cool. Yeah, there were some Superboy people there last year. I don't know who else is going to be there this year. But yeah, holler at me if you're going to be in Metropolis this year, because I will be there. All right, looks like Morgan is here. Morgan, wait, yeah, okay. Morgan, will you? Can I talk you into going to Superman Celebration?
When is that?
Let's see. I'll have to dig up the dates for it. I'm actually mad that you weren't there last year because I had to go to that ghost.
I know. I missed a good spooky time, it sounds like.
Morgan was like, you should go check that out. And then I was like totally freaked out.
I was like, Rebecca, there are ghosts.
It's June 10th through the 12th if anybody wants to go. So yeah, that is when it is. I'll drop the link into. Is this the website? This doesn't. I guess that is the website, but it doesn't maybe look like the website I've seen previously. But I think that is the one. So I've dropped it in the chat if anybody wants to check it out. We'll have to look over the schedule again to see if they have any new offerings from last year. I don't think I'm going to go to the glow dance again.
That sounded like it was maybe a little bit like they were promising something that they didn't deliver.
It was fun for about 30 seconds and then it just died. So maybe I won't put an effort into that this upcoming year. We'll see. Anyway, I think we should probably get started. Do you have the Google Doc for this episode?
I do.
Okay, cool. So we're going to be talking about season 1, episode 2, Stronger Together. So if anybody has thoughts, feel free to drop them in the chat. And I guess we will go ahead and get started.
Leslalar's downfall is just that eyebrow twitch that she can't help doing. Could you imagine if Hope was like, let's add that to the PowerPoint? Excuse
what
me?
year is it?
How old am I? This is how the podcast breaks up.
This is the last episode of Supergirl Radio. You want a Kryptonian? You got one.
Is it a movie about saving Argo? The answer to that one is no. It's called Witch for a Summer! ! Where does she want to go? Ask her. Talk to her. Really commune with flat Supergirl.
Did we set the bar too high or too low?
I think we set the bar real medium.
You're doing an intensely adequate podcast.
Good.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Benoist, and you're listening to Supergirl Radio.
McGurk! I love typing.
Not mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira.
I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because
she looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Welcome to Supergirl Radio, your source for all things related to the CW Supergirl TV series and the character of Zor-el. My name is Rebecca Johnson.
I'm Morgan Glennon.
And for this episode of the podcast, we are live and wired on the Supergirl Radio Facebook page and the DCTV Podcast YouTube channel to go back in time. We're doing this because Morgan didn't get to review Supergirl episodes as a full-time co-host of Supergirl Radio until the episode World's Finest, which aired in March of 2016. So we are going to revisit the first season to get Morgan's thoughts, and we are going to do that this time around with the season 1 episode 2 Stronger Together. So before we get to that, we need to go back in time, so let's rewind back to season 1.
Ooh.
All right. So do you feel like you time traveled?
It's intense. I've got the spins now.
Well, since we don't have any news this week, we're just going to get right to it. So here is the official description of Stronger Together. Side note, I didn't document the source for this back in the day when I first podcasted about this episode. And then when I tried to go find it, it was difficult to find. I guess it's been buried in the internet. So I couldn't find it. So I'm glad that I documented it in the Google Doc for this episode so I could actually pull up the episode description.
Oh no, all of Veronica's work is disappearing.
So I'm glad that I keep this database in my Google Docs around. So here is the official description of Stronger Together. Quote, when Kara's attempts to help National City don't go according to plan, she must put aside the doubts that she and the city's media has about her abilities in order to capture an escapee from the Kryptonian prison Fort Roz, unquote. Now, Morgan, I have a lot of questions for you, but I think what the format we should do for Supergirl Radio Rewind is I just want to open it up. You have the floor. What do you want to talk about with this episode?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I just kind of enjoyed this one. I just kind of like sat back and was like, oh, season 1, look at that. The colors they're so much brighter and everyone was so much younger and happier.
So I guess that opens up a conversation about the possible quality of the episode. Do you feel like there is a difference in watching Stronger Together versus kind of what happens later down the road, or is that a loaded question?
I mean, you're leading me in a direction, but it's the direction I was walking in, so I'm not. No, I do think that like in general, it was more about Supergirl, and it was Supergirl stories and the about what Supergirl was going through, what Kara was going through. It felt like she was the main character of this television show. And that felt a little off to me, a little different. I was confused. Who is this person and why is she getting so much screen time? I asked myself. But no, I really liked that, everything was really centered in Kara and her struggles. And like, I like this episode because the pilot is this big dramatic moment where she rescues the plane, and then she learns that, Alex is actually working for the DEO. I was going to make an alias joke, but I was like, no one gets the airplane parts thing, Morgan. You have to stop saying it. But basically, like, the first episode's a very triumphant, introduction of Supergirl. And I think a lot of shows would have been like, Supergirl here to save the day. And in the second one, it's like, Supergirl, she doesn't really know what she's doing. And I love when she tries to like save the ship and they're like, what are you doing? It's gonna blow. And she's like, all right, I got a different idea. And she starts pulling it away from the fire, and everyone's like, all right. And then she breaks it, and they're all like,
my favorite part during that sequence is you hear somebody in the background going, "You're making it worse."
Yes,
That's my favorite part.
That like really made me laugh very hard.
Stop it! You're making it
worse. She's like, I'm trying. But I like the idea of like, you don't become a well-oiled superhero in a day. And this is kind of the episode where she's getting her feet underneath of her, and she's starting with some smaller superheroics instead of jumping to always fighting a Fort Roz escapee, which of course she does in this episode as well.
Well, yeah, I guess she technically does, because Astra is a Fort Roz escapee, but Alex fights a Fort Roz escapee as well.
Yeah. So, but she also, she deals with a store robbery, and she gets Fluffy down from a tree, Fluffy being a snake, a joke that I really enjoyed. How would I know it's a snake? Its name was Fluffy. And I think it was just nice to see her interacting with like the people of National City, which as the show went on, we saw less and less of. And they brought it back a little bit in season 6, which actually I appreciated. It was one of the things I liked about season 6 is that there were just people who lived in National City again. They just existed.
And
there
they
was
stayed around for a while too. For
It was
like an episode, like several episode arcs.
I know, yeah. It was like kind of we talk about Lost on this show all the time, but it was like kind of like on Lost where like occasionally the red shirts on the island would get a line and you're like, you're still alive?
Where did you come from?
Exactly. Who? Nikki and Paolo, who? And I thought by that point in Supergirl that the rest of National City had basically ceased to exist. And so it was nice that they brought them back in. But here in the early days, you really get to see her interact with, with the people of National City, the first responders who are like, stop it, you're making it worse, and the media who doesn't really know what to do with her, and just kind of like the everyday people who are beginning to appreciate her more and more. I even like that before they had the guys in the dark tunnel and obviously they're going to die, but they're like disagreeing about whether or not Supergirl is any good at her job. And the one guy's like, hey man, like she's new, give her some time. And it feels like that would be something that people would like argue about whether you were pro or anti this new superhero popping up in your town. And so it felt like National City was more of a real place and less of a one-dimensional stage in which they were the super friends were basically having their own adventures. It was like, oh, other people live here too.
Yeah, there are actual stakes that people need to be saved, and it's a real live breathing place. Yeah, National City definitely felt a little different in season 1 because they incorporated some of those people. So I guess let's maybe talk about some of those people. So I feel like we should continue to take advantage of the opportunity to discuss Cat Grant,
Of course.
we only really got to see her in season 1, a couple episodes in season 2, and then of course a younger version of Cat Grant in season 6. So after season 1, we didn't get to talk about her very much. So Morgan, what did you think about Cat Grant in this episode and her need to help Supergirl in a very Cat Grant way, which is, try to get her to be better as a superhero, and then eventually trying to go after an interview with her. So what did you think about Cat in this episode?
As always, I love Cat. I don't know if I love her management style, which is like, do the thing I want you to do or else I'm going to fire you. That doesn't seem like a great like a great leader. Doesn't seem like they should have to threaten to fire their artistic director quite as often as she does. But listen, we all have our own ways about it.
That's her managerial style.
Yeah, exactly. I love that, like, at the end, she's calling Jimmy to be like, pack your bags. Jeez, Cat, you gave him 2 days and then you like called him at the end of like day 1 and was like, never mind. It's like she was Lena breaking up with him, just tossing him out of that limo mid-drive.
It was a Rolls Royce, I should clarify.
That's true. Thank you. I just feel like once you hire someone, you should just like maybe like give them a little time to settle in before tossing them.
That's true. He just started working there.
They just and presumably he was a big get from the Daily Planet. Like they just poached him in some ways from the Daily Planet. His office wasn't even set up in the last episode. It was like bare walls, and already she's like, get me what I want or I'll fire you. She's it's tough love with Cat Grant.
She got what she wanted though.
She did. She sure did. I like when Kara goes out to talk to him and she's like, I really don't mind like doing the interview. It's okay. And he goes, oh, yeah, of course you would have been listening in on me. Like the moment where he goes like, wait, what are you? Oh, super hearing.
Yeah. He would understand that. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting with Kat in this episode, just kind of going from like what we've been watching to now coming back to rewatching season 1, there were a couple of things I thought were interesting. So Kat calls Kara in this episode. So now that we're going back through season 1, I want to know when she starts calling her Kira. I want to pin that down.
I vaguely remembered that she sort of cycled through different pronunciations of her name. And yeah, I don't feel like we've gotten to Kira quite yet, or at least we haven't gotten to her settling on exclusively Kira.
Yeah, Kira becomes like the name at some point, but I don't think we've gotten there. But I do like it that it's Kara because her name is pronounced Kara, and there's that debate about different variations go with Kara, some go with Kara. So I like that Kat is sort of mispronouncing it here as Kara, but it's not really wrong in a sense. But for this version of it, it is.
It feels more like how you would actually mispronounce it if you weren't doing it on purpose. Which
right.
At some point, she clearly is. Like, she's like, "Oh, mispronouncing your name is like a fun joke you and I have," and Kara's like, "Is it?"
I also noticed that she uses go in this episode. At some point, I think she settles on, chop chop. I think is her sort of her trademark thing that she says. But here she doesn't say it, but she does kind of a little go thing, which I thought was interesting. And the only other thing that well, actually there are two other things. Kara says something about how she thinks that Kat would recognize her as Supergirl in like 1 second. And maybe this is something we need to talk about in the third episode when they actually do her interview, because I have questions about whether or not you think that maybe she does recognize her. Now, I guess we could talk about that a little bit here, Morgan. Do you think at this point in the show that Kat has already nailed down the Kara as Supergirl? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it would be hilarious if that was true. Just like immediately, she's like, "Isn't that my assistant? That's why my coffee is always cold."
Well, it was hot in this episode.
It was. Yeah. She was like, "Look at that. You got the confidence, kid." No, I don't think personally. I mean, it's hard to tell because Kat's definitely a character that keeps things close to the chest, to like her. Close to like keeps her cards close to her chest. So I could see it either side, I think, could make an argument. I don't think that she's put that together quite yet.
Okay, I'm curious if that will change in the next episode for you, because I have some thoughts on the next episode.
Nice. I haven't watched ahead. I'm experiencing this in real time with the podcast.
We've already watched these episodes, but it's been quite some time.
I have no memory. Don't worry. My memory is like Alex's after John like wipes Supergirl out.
Just
it's
Swiss
like
cheese.
There's just sort of a vague Supergirl shaped hole. I know stuff happened. I don't remember the particulars.
Yeah, so we are. It's almost like we're experiencing it for the first time. So we'll maybe revisit this question in the next episode. I'd be curious to hear what you thought. The only other thing that I had a question about that maybe I didn't ask the first time around, but so there's a scene where Kat has something that looks like a Catco article in like a sort of like a sleeve of some kind, and she hands it to Kara, and she says something about that Kara needs to get it prepped for a noon posting. And I had questions about that.
And wait, I'm sorry. A posting to what?
This is my question.
Yeah, they understand that you don't just post magazines. Like you don't. Kara's not just opening up a window in the Catco Tower and just tossing out a sheet of. Wait, what if we thought this whole time that they were doing some sort of media conglomerate, but what they were really doing was like a real throwback to old-fashioned broadsheets, which they would then just toss out the windows around about noon when they had new things to cry on the corner. What if and we can pull this back to the newsboy legion, because what if they just have like a bunch of newsies around the city standing on street corners, like crying the news, like trying to sell papes.
What would they say? Something like
extra,
here
about it.
Here or something. What would a town crier have said?
I feel like the newsies would have been like, extra, extra, Supergirl, not all that super. Read more about it. And then they've got like one single pamphlet page.
Extra, extra, you're making it worse.
You're making it worse. And then they're just trying to give it to people on the street corner as they walk away. Is that what Catco was?
Catco being a town crier is so much better,
right? Because
I really think we need to bring town criers back. That's my
I wish you could just walking about your day. Oh, the news. But it like posting this up sounds to me like an internet thing,
like an online post. Like she's gonna write it up. So why would she need to print it? Then put it in one of those like transparent sleeves and hand it to her to go somewhere with it. Why wouldn't she just open up WordPress and start typing it?
Okay, I'm not saying anything about Callista Flockhart, who is forever young to me.
Yes.
But what if Cat Grant is like one of those old people that like still prints out directions from MapQuest?
Well, I thought about that too. Like, what if she printed it out to see how she liked the layout? Maybe that was a thing. Because sometimes people do that with magazines, for example, to see how it's gonna like print on the page. Well, why couldn't you just like pull the? I just thought that was really weird. It made me more confused about Catco than I ever was. So I was wondering where your thoughts were on that.
I missed that line, or at least I didn't clue into that line. But yeah, I still couldn't tell you the organizational structure of Catco. Like, what do they do? What kind of media? It's worldwide. Cool. Like, what do you do?
But
I feel like
is it worldwide
Cat's a blue sky thinker? Like,
but don't they only cover National City?
It does seem that way, yeah. So the worldwide does seem deceptive in the title.
So I was very confused about that with Cat Grant, but yeah. So there was Kara's sort of struggle with her being a superhero. How did you think that she did with that? How do you think she handled that?
I thought she handled it pretty well. I like that she struggled. I like my superheroic characters to not be perfect at their jobs and not have all the answers, because people don't. And I like to see her kind of fall down on the job and not quite know what she was doing and have to kind of learn on the fly and learn that not everything has to be destroying a ship by accident or putting out a huge fire. It can also be getting into the community and saving people on a smaller level, or saving pets and things like that. Smaller things that she can kind of build up her brand, so to speak, so that people are more trustworthy when she needs to come in and do the bigger things and kind of build up. It's kind of it's in many ways she's learning on the job like anyone does, which is you don't start day one as CEO unless you're the child of a rich person. But for the rest of us, we have to start entry level and build up those skills and then take the next step. And I think Kara was trying to jump to really advanced stuff day two, and it kind of bit her, and then she had to go back and kind of start from the ground up. And I liked that training scene with Alex, because Alex said, hey, when I first started the DEO, I had to be in here for months training.
A year before she could go out into the
What is her timeline? Wait, I'm sorry. Oh, no. No part of her timeline makes sense. Was that during her drunken phase, or was that while she was in medical school? I don't.
We really need to draw it out at some point and actually
chart it.
I think it would help me visually if I could actually see it.
Chart her timeline and be like, how? When Alex was that year that Alex spent bending time and space when she was training. But I like that she taught Supergirl how to fight a foe with superior strength. And then you think, why would Supergirl ever need to know that? And then later in the episode, when she's fighting Astra, suddenly it's hey, that lesson that Alex taught me suddenly is useful.
The writing actually
Look at around in a circle.
it like went somewhere.
Connecting.
It didn't contradict itself in the scene. So that's really cool that that Alex has a part to play in this to actually teach Supergirl something. And I'm with you. I like that Supergirl had somewhere to go as a character, and I think it's actually appropriate for Supergirl because a lot of people think that Superman should have everything together all the time. He should be perfect. He never makes mistakes. He should never have any doubts. He should never have any problems. But Supergirl, you can have her make some mistakes because that's kind of part of her character is that sometimes she's a little brash and does some things maybe before she should be doing it. And what I liked about Kat in this episode is that Kat is one of the ones who Alex helps her in the training session, but Kat's the one who's like, you need to chill out. She doesn't say that. Maybe I kind of think she thinks that Kara is Supergirl, but she says something like, if she was going to advise Supergirl, she would say, chill out, slow down. And I like that Kara took her advice. She didn't see that as mean-spirited or anything like that. She respected Kat enough to say, oh, well, Kat thinks maybe I should do this, maybe I should try that. And it totally revitalizes her whole perspective on being Supergirl and changes her approach to it, and it makes it better. So I missed, I think when I was watching this, I missed season 1's approach to the storytelling because season 1 focused a lot on Kat mentoring Kara and Kara having someone she could talk to about these things and who would help her grow as a character. And I didn't really get that onto the rest of the season. And at some point, maybe you don't need that, but I really liked Kat mentoring her, both as Kara and as Supergirl. And I really fell back into that with this episode.
Yeah, I love that the connection between Kat and Kara. I think it's so nice to see Kara have a mentor, even though Kat is, dismissive and very cat-like, and she's not going to say anything special for Kara, but she does, she gives her really good advice, which is she's Supergirl is trying to do too much too fast, and she needs to calm down. And I think Kara immediately sees the value in that advice, and I do miss that aspect of. Later in the series, we see Kara be a mentor to Nia and Dreamer, but after Kat leaves, we really don't ever get that kind of mentor relationship again, and at least not in the same way. You could make an argument that sometimes Jean is a mentor, but I think he's more like a replacement father figure. And
yeah, I would agree with that.
I guess Snapper, I guess you could make a very vague that Snapper was supposed to be the new Cat Grant, but then they gave up on him about halfway through, and then they snapped him off to wherever and never brought him back. They were like, "Where's Snapper?" And people were like, "Whatever."
Yeah, I think Snapper was actually a boss and not necessarily a mentor. I don't know that he really played that same kind of role. I did want to address something here in the chat. Daryl says someone a long time ago made a great point that Kara shouldn't have been sore once she is out of the the kryptonite room and she's recovered. But after that, she goes in to chat with Cat Grant about how Cat suggested that she go work out, and Kara uses that as cover for being sore. But I agree with that. I don't think Kara is a Kryptonian. Once she's out of that kryptonite room, she should be fine. So I don't know why she was sore like that.
I also see that Miss Fiction Fanatic in the chat says the article that Kat was holding was for the National City Tribune.
Yeah, I don't dispute that it was for the newspaper. I just don't know why she handed her a printed out thing and said it needed to be for the
in the newspaper.
Noon posting. Like what?
Also, and I hate to be in this, but I don't think that are there editions anymore to newspapers, or is there a morning and an evening edition?
That's a lot. That's a lot of print. That's a lot of.
I mean,
effort.
Print media is, I don't want to say dying, but
no,
certainly not doing great.
It's good. Right? It's on the way out. Yeah.
It's not doing morning and noon edition good for sure.
That's a lot.
I don't believe that there is a noon edition to the National City Tribune.
I think at the most you would have done like a morning and an evening,
And
but
even
that's a lot.
even that stretches credulity at this point. And even back, 5 years ago, it's not like the downturn has been that fast. It was already not in a great place in 2016. So
Yeah, it's very strange. I'm so
side-eyeing that.
confused about Catco. Always have been, always will be. I did want to point out something here. Miss Fiction Fanatic mentions the Supergirl timeline, how it's never been consistent, and some episodes Kara said she came to Earth at 13, and different episodes she came here at 12. What I thought was really interesting about the timeline in this episode was that at the very beginning of the episode, she says she's doing her Supergirl narration, and she says it's been a week since she revealed herself as Supergirl, which I was like, I don't want to give the writers credit, because sometimes in season 6 I think they were just winging it and making things up, but for her to say in episode 2 that she revealed herself as Supergirl, I thought was kind of, now looking back on it, knowing how the series ends and the end of the show, she's actually revealing herself as Kara Danvers. I thought was kind of an interesting. I don't know that was intentional.
Definitely not, but I like that it works.
but it does, I think, give it a little bit of a kind of an opposite end of the spectrum, and that she's revealed her both of her identities at some point to National City.
So I feel like since the chat has been talking about logical inconsistencies and like timeline issues and things that were different in season 1 and then never spoken of again, the Helgramite in this episode.
Yes.
Now, later on in the show, we see another Helgramite, right? Like, am I making that up?
Yes, he murders Mercy Graves. That's
right.
That's
right.
where
Okay.
we see him again. Yes.
So where was he getting his food to eat? Because they made a big point about the fact that these Helgramites can only exist on, what was it? DDT?
Mhm.
Which is like in nuclear power plants and like not many other places. And they're apparently decommissioning some of those things and getting rid of it. And so they're like, oh, his food source is going away. And I was like, but yet years later, we still see a bunch of them. So where are they eating?
I guess they figured out something. Maybe they found something else to eat.
Did they
were like,
did
maybe
they
this
make
is
like
a good substitute.
Did they make like a DDT sizzler somewhere that the Helgramites could
They
go
just
to,
churn it
or-
out all the time.
Endless salad bars of DDT. I mean, I was just like, that never comes back up again. So okay.
Well, that to me signals that he was only meant to be in that one episode.
I didn't think that. I was like, why would you? I mean, I feel like maybe just don't bring that particular alien species back again. But that was, it's funny. It's funny the things we fixated on, because that was the one that I fixated on, where I was like, but they said his food source is going away. But then suddenly there were so many more of them. Shouldn't there have been less of them? So
well, what
the
I
stuff
sort
that
of
I focus on is also just nonsense.
Well, what's funny about the Helgramite to me is that when we initially discussed this episode on Supergirl Radio, I was not working with museums and entomologists, so I didn't have some of the knowledge about Helgramites that I do now. But now, having learned a few bug facts here and there, and trying to become more bug friendly because of what I do during the day. Helgramites are actually water bugs, and there was a line in the episode where somebody says like he was hiding under a rock. Helgramites sometimes will do that in the water. They'll actually kind of attach themselves to a rock, and you can pick up a rock and flip it over and you'll see a Helgramite there. But I now, knowing a little bit about Helgramites, I don't know a ton. I just really know that they're water bugs. I thought it was weird that they didn't show him like in the water somewhere. I don't know. That's probably a real nitpick, but But now that I know about a little bit about real world Hellgrammites, I kind of thought that was a little strange.
Oh, so I see Sam Gutierrez in the chat says the show said the Hellgrammite was chlorine based. Could he have been eating other chlorine based chemicals other than DDT?
Was he just like sipping up swimming pool water?
What if all the Hellgrammites were like, we've been going about this all wrong? Pool party. And like, because if it's a chlorine situation, then they're gonna be fine.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's
They
enough
just-
backyard pools to keep them alive for ages.
Oh yeah. They could go hang out at other people's pools.
They just go down to the YMCA.
Yeah. Yeah, they would never run out of a source if they just drank chlorine all the time. I think that explains it. I think that fills in that whole plot hole.
Okay, I mean it wasn't even a plot hole. It was just like, haven't we seen Hellgrammites before?
I think
They
it was
never
a plot
mentioned the
hole.
DDT again. It was like no one else would ever think about this except like when you're rewatching it 6 years later and you're like, I seem like I remember. But there, yeah, exactly. But yeah, I thought that was interesting because I was like, oh, we've seen that alien race again.
Yeah, Donna says there was just one Hellgrammite. My question to that, because I think we maybe had this conversation on Supergirl Radio at one point, because he it looks like he kills himself because he like stabs himself, and it looks like he's dead. And then the Hellgrammite shows back up in season 4 and murders Mercy Graves, and I'll never forgive him for that.
How dare he?
How dare he? So I always assumed that there was just another Hellgrammite out there.
Okay, so I am on now I'm deep down this rabbit hole. I am on the Arrow fandom wiki page for Hellgrammites for Supergirl.
Yes.
And I'm seeing appearances season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4, season 5, which can't be right.
That's not possible.
It can't be right. I feel like okay, so season 1 is stronger together. Season 2, they're mentioned in Mr. and Mrs. Pitlick. In season 3, they're mentioned on Crisis on Infinite Earth X, and then back in season 4, and then video footage in the bottle episode of season 5.
I don't have any recollection of that.
I mean, if it says so,
it must be right.
Known Hellgrammites, unnamed. That's kind of brutal. They couldn't have given him a name like Bob or Theodore.
I'll try to see if I can get Justice League to come on Supergirl Radio. I had him come on for a work thing where we talked about Hellgrammites. So maybe I'll reach back out to Justice League and let him get the full Supergirl Radio experience. So maybe we'll have to have him come on and we can ask him all of our Hellgrammite questions.
Nice.
To see what how he explains all of this.
Excuse me, sir. Was he drinking chlorine? How did he survive between those seasons?
We'll work that out. Maybe we can try to see if we can get him back. Get him on Supergirl Radio. I'll see if I can get him back on something else I'm doing. But yeah, so maybe we'll try that in the future. So speaking of the villains. So Hellgrammite was sort of like kind of the one-off villain, but he wasn't the only villain in the episode. So Morgan, what did you think about Astra and the other Kryptonian Fort Ross escapees?
I like Astra in this episode because she is like full on evil. She is giving me like face. She is giving me like, I don't care. I am an evil queen. There's like a moment where she's like, oh, Kara, it's been so long. And Kara's like, and Astra? And then she's like, boom, and like punches her. There's not a lot of time where she's like, hey, it's good to see you. It's right into the fighting. But I do think that it's definitely emotional. And I like the way that they sort of played it with Kara and Astra, and it turning out to be about Kara's mom. Which is kind of making her question, like, how much did I know my mom, and like what is Aunt Astra talking about, and I like the I think Astra says something about or Kara says something about like all that time I used to spend on your lap, like talking to you when I was young, and you can really feel that they had a connection, that that Kara liked her aunt, and but then didn't know why she just disappeared. She thought she had died on Krypton. She was like, no, because your mom put me in jail. And that's got to be a little surprising to hear about your family. Like, oh, that's why Aunt Astra didn't come to Christmas. So I really liked the way that they played up the family dynamic in this episode. And I like her sort of back and forth with Alex, where she like, says Alex is like, oh, you're pretty brave for your species, and like that humans are so breakable. And then the way that she freaks out when she gets stabbed with the kryptonite knife, like she's like, nothing should hurt me.
So do you think that all of this was planned in advance? Because there's some foreshadowing there, because if you recall in season 1, I don't want to spoil it for you, Morgan.
My memory's not that bad.
But Alex and Astra have a showdown, and that's how Astra ends up maybe not being on the show anymore. So there's that comes at the end of the season. So to me, if that was planned out like right at the get-go, I think that's really interesting. Like they thought, I mean, I really wish we could talk to somebody early on, like an Allie Adler, to answer some of those questions about plotting out the first season. Because it seems, given their interaction in this episode, it seems like they had that in mind, that Alex and Astra would have a butting of heads later on.
And I wouldn't be surprised if they had at least planned it out towards like the big moments in season 1, like knowing where they were going to as the season progressed. Like not everything I feel like was probably planned, but I could definitely see them talking about breaking the season and saying like, and then as we get towards the end, maybe Alex and Astra have like a confrontation. So setting that up early on to have, Astra and Alex sort of have this like episode 2 meeting and confrontation, and Alex recognize her, I thought was also a cool thing, where she, because she's seen the projection of Allura, she recognizes Astra.
And she saw that in the previous episode. While we're talking about this, it's sort of blowing my mind that it's also well written. And the things that we're talking about are so very basic. It's like taking something that happened in the first episode and connecting it to the second episode, and then plotting out something at the beginning of the season and having it come back at the end of the season. Those are very basic TV writing things to do. And for some reason, it's like mind-blowingly great to me.
Well, some of that stuff had sort of fallen by the wayside by the time that they were doing the what was the doodad that they had to collect them all in season 6?
The totems.
The totems, yeah. By the time they were putting together the Rubik's Cube of season 6, they had kind of thrown some of that basic story structure out the window. We were podcasting about it every single week, and I could not draw you a map of how that storyline worked. So this one seemed quite, it's like, okay, there's a personal connection for the character. We're building up the character and seeing what she's about. The villain has to do with her backstory, which is great because it allows us to, explore Kara's backstory and Krypton and her, her heritage. All that stuff is like, it's really great. Like, how about when you connect stuff really tightly with the main character, and then you're telling, even if you're telling stories about the villain, you're telling stories about the main character. How about that?
And it's also simple. It's nothing so complicated that you have a hard time, or at least for me, I can't speak about
I never
for anyone
once
else.
had to feel like I had to draw a flow chart to figure out like what Astra was up to.
I don't know. Just while we were talking about it, I was like, wow, this is really good. And this shouldn't be so remarkable to me, but it is very good. It's very solid. Speaking of villains, there was another villain that maybe we could argue about whether he was a villain or not, but we get the introduction of Mr. Maxwell Lord.
That's right.
He didn't pop up for too long. But did you have any thoughts on the sort of the teaser for Maxwell Lord?
He just sort of popped up on the TV, I think.
Yeah, and they talk about how Wynn is a big fan of Maxwell
Mhm.
Lord. He's bought his watches
And
and his biography and his
biography.
autobiography.
I definitely feel like Maxwell Lord is somebody who would have already had an autobiography out, like My Life by Maxwell Lord, uh, which is also maybe the name of his signature scent. But no, I mean I liked the little teaser we got of Maxwell Lord. I think the next episode or the episode after that is heavier on him, but I think we got just enough of him to be like, oh, that guy seems kind of smart, swarmy, and like I don't know if I like that guy. And then we'll get more of him later. But I thought it was a good introduction to not overload the episode with like a million villains but give a tease of like another one that's going to be coming. And I guess, spoiler alert for season 1, he's never a full out villain. He's more like a morally gray to like towing the villain line. But certainly he's not a great guy. So so it was good to get like an introduction of him, but it didn't take over the whole episode and it didn't make it feel too cluttered. I think it was like more of a teaser than anything.
Yeah, it was a good use of world building. They kind of introduced us to the character and showed, okay, this guy is out there. He's a part of the known world of National City and this version of the DC universe. He's somebody that people look up to. He's out there. He's on the news. That's hosted by Perd Hapley. So so there's a world building aspect to that I like, that when we encounter Maxwell Lord, we already know who he is and kind of what his deal is and how he connects to everything. So I thought that was handled well.
Yeah, I was also just thinking about like how much I liked some of the guest actors that they had in season 1. So the actor who plays Maxwell Lord, who of course I'm blanking on his name, Peter Facinelli.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really liked him in that role. Laura Bernanti as Astra / Allura is really great. I mean, I think what a powerhouse actress, and like in the Allura parts, you can really feel for her, but in the Astra parts, she can really go from like being understandable to being like evil, and really play that dynamic. So I just really liked they did a great job casting season 1. Like I think we've always said that like one of the strengths of this show really was in the casting. Like I can't imagine a different, I can't imagine a different Kara or a different Alex or Martian Manhunter or Lena or anything like that. The casting I think was great. And even in season 1, the casting for the villains and for the the side characters I think was so strong.
Yeah, I think they all really committed to the parts, even if it's a little mustache twirling with Astra. But even if it's mustache twirling, I really loved it. There's a point where she says something like she calls herself Supergirl. She kind of really like rubs it in, and so even if it's a little bit on the edge of being a little campy, I think it works for some of those performances. So yeah, the villains are really really good. Before we move on, because I want to talk about James a little bit. But CM Gutierrez 74 asked, do you think Maxwell Lord knew Lex Luthor socially on Earth 38, possibly sharing some anti-alien sentiments? So what are your thoughts on that, Morgan?
I could see it. I mean, I feel like they're both rich and they're both full of themselves. So I don't know that they were like I don't know that they liked each other. I feel like
they're competitors, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like the opposite probably would be like they would both think that they have the answer to the alien problem, and that they probably wouldn't have gotten along very well, because I feel like once you get like that once you start buying your own hype that much, like you wouldn't be able to be like, well, that Maxwell Lord has a good idea because he's like Lex Luthor, and he's like, no. So, yeah. But I can imagine them being like evil version of Cat Grant, the way that she feels about Lois Lane.
Yes.
Like, where they're like, oh, well, Lex Luthor said this.
Yeah, I think they were probably more competitors and maybe not somebody who would hang out with each other, because Maxwell Lord had a little something with Cat Grant, so
Oh,
that's who
right.
he was hanging out with socially. So I don't think
Wink, wink.
Lex Luthor was running in those social circles, because I don't think Lex would have put up with the two of them. I think Lex would have thought he was better than them. But I think they probably were sort of technological competitors to save the world from the alien invasion from Krypton. Yeah, that's a good question, though. Okay, so Morgan, just to get your thoughts on this, because this was something that was built up in season 1 and then sort of pushed aside and was never spoken again. Spoken about again. So Kara and James are, getting to know each other a little better in this episode, and they have a few pep talks, as it were. So, what did you think about their dynamic in Stronger Together?
Yeah, before I get into their dynamic, I do want to say I like the way that the Super Friends start to come together in episode 2. One of the things I really appreciated about Supergirl is that it didn't do the Smallville thing where, like, 5 seasons in, one person finally learns the secret, and you're like, great, now Pete knows. And Pete's like, would you like some Trident? And you're like, great, now Pete knows. In the pilot, she's like, I feel like the show's pretty clear, like, we're not going to do this thing where, all the characters don't know her secret for seasons and seasons. They decided to do that later, but just with Lena, and it was a chore, honestly. But I was glad that they didn't do it. There's a version of this show where, like, nobody but Alex knows her secret, and that version of this show, I think, would have been way more annoying, as she had to be like, oh, hold on, I gotta go, and, like, just disappeared all the time. And then Wynn was mad at her, and James was mad at her, and everything was secrets and lies. And so I appreciate that, like, in episode 2, she has James and Wynn go out to the alleyway, and she's basically like, hey, you both know we're all friends. And they're like, I'm not friends with him, because obviously there's some romantic tension there. And then later on, she opens the door to Alex, and Alex is like, seriously, when she sees she sees them in there. She's like, I don't think it's a good idea that you told all your friends. And Kara is like, but they're my friends. and Alex is like, oh my God, this is why you spend 2 to 5 to 15 years training all at the same time. But yeah, no, season 1 was definitely like, James was the love interest, and they were trying to get you to invest in that pairing between the two of them. And Kara had the little crush on James, and James was kind of giving her advice based on, what he had experienced with Clark, and being, Jimmy Olsen from the Daily Planet, and kind of blowing up, but feeling like he hadn't blown up because of himself, but just because of, like, the heroics of other people.
He wanted to be James, the grown man, also.
He was like, it's time for me to move out, to break out on my own, and to be grown. To be grown. A grown man. I'm not Jimmy. Look at how tall I am. You wouldn't call a tall man like this Jimmy.
I don't wear bow ties anymore. I wear full-length ties.
He's like, look at me. I'm grown. And then he starts crying. But I thought, yeah, they're really trying to play up the romance angle between Kara and James. It's not like, I feel like I'm tainted by knowing that they gave up on this romance, like, so very quickly.
For unknown reasons.
We'll just never know, because there was no reason, and it was so abrupt in season 2, where it's like, well, goodbye. Like, they kind of, like, look at each other, shake hands, and say, and she's like, good day, sir. And he's like, good day. And off they go.
That's not far off.
It's really not. But in season 1, they're really playing it up. They're playing up this, she's got a crush on him. And does he like her? We're trying to kind of feel him out. There was definitely some romantic tension, I think, on that balcony scene where,
were you
picking
it up on it?
Like, crackling chemistry? No, it was not.
Okay.
I thought they had okay chemistry. And I think that's the case in this episode as well. Like, they're okay. The show's not selling me on them being like this great couple I really want to root for, but it is early days in the season. So, I mean, and the episode 2 is trying to do like a lot of stuff. But yeah, I don't think that they've really quite, got them to like they're not Jim and Pam, let's put it that way. Like I'm not like
not many are.
please get together. I'm just
Or
like
early Jim and Pam, not the Jim and Pam later on in the series where they're like, oh, did one of them have an affair with somebody else? Like, I was done with that Jim and Pam. Forget that Jim and Pam.
Oh my God, that show really could have gone off of a cliff, and thankfully did not. But
well, it's funny with James. I don't know if it's Makad Brooks. I don't know, but like I am a little in our rewind. I'm a little invested in James and Kara, and I was invested in James and Lena. I think it was the only one who watched the show who was like, James and Lena, okay, let's do this. So maybe it's just Makad Brooks is selling it for me. I don't know, but I do like the idea that he helps her with the knowledge of almost how to be a superhero, but more so like how to see the city, because she just kind of, I like that scene where he tells her to look outside the window and she's like, oh, I see buildings and that guy down the street who cards me every time I go into the restaurant.
I loved that detail.
I love it. She's like, he knows how old I am.
He knows how old I am.
Melissa Benoist is so good.
Delivery on that is so good.
She's so good. Even in the scene where she has to fake like she's laughing about the cat video. God, Melissa Benoist was just so good when they gave her stuff to do. But in that scene where he sort of reframes that view for her, I thought was really great, and I could see why she as a character, why Kara would start to fall for him a little bit, because he believes so much in her, not just as Supergirl, but in her as Kara, as someone who can make a difference. Because later on in the episode, after she's starting to get a few W's, she says something to the effect of, oh, they're really starting to believe in her. And James says, believe in you. Like, he, I think, really believes in her as someone who can make a difference, and not just with the cape. So I'm at this point, I'm starting to pull for James and Kara. I know I'm going to be devastated at the beginning of season 2, but that's kind of where I am so far in the rewind.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see James and Kara like get to know each other a little bit more, because it's kind of hard to come from like with all of our knowledge of the show and remember that like at this point they had kind of barely knew each other. He's brand new. Of course, Kat's already firing him, so good signs. He just moved to National City. He's like trying to be his grown man self. And so like they don't really know each other that well. They don't have the backstory that like her and Wynn have, where they've been friends for years. James is kind of new to her life. So I think I like that they have them getting to know each other in this episode, and having him give her advice and having him tell her about his view on things and how he's kind of feeling. I think it's all good. It's all good build up. The fact that it goes nowhere is kind of tainting it, but yeah. I think at this point, like, they're doing what they should be doing in building a like relationship between these two characters.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought was interesting in the looking back in the rewind aspect of this is that Kara, on that scene with James towards the end of the episode, Kara says something like, Wynn and I are going to go back to my place and we're going to listen to the scanner for more Super Friend activities. And I don't know about you, but I started thinking about young Kara in season 6 with young Kara and Kenny Lee and how they were going around supering together. And I thought about that. Not that they had planned that out in season 1, probably that young Kara was going to be like that too. But me trying to reconcile the timeline of Kara's life, could she have been in that moment on that balcony, Catco balcony, reflecting back and getting back into the days of her time with Kenny Lee and trying to be a superhero kind of on the side with her friends. Like, I don't know.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
just having that thought
No, I
while I was
like
watching
that.
it.
Yeah, I like that they've set that sort of up in the later season, that there was like, she did the super friend thing with her, with Kenny and everybody in high school, and that, so this idea, yeah, that she might like fall right back into, you know, superheroing again, just like she had back in the past, even though obviously this is a pre-crisis
Yes.
timeline, and
I don't
that's a
think this is
post-crisis,
really
but
connected intentionally, but that's what I thought of.
but I do like it. I like thinking about that, because I like that post crisis. The one post crisis thing I like is that she had that support system in high school post crisis with Kenny, and him knowing about her powers, and them, adventuring together and superheroing and stuff like that. So yeah, I like that idea of, her getting right back to like listening to the scanner for trouble.
Okay, so Morgan, are there any other things that we did not talk about that you wanted to discuss about this episode?
No, I think that covers most of the episode. I really enjoyed this one. I think that they balanced setting up Supergirl really well with setting up the villains, and giving you a little bit more of their backstory, like Astra's backstory, and some of the Fort Roz escapees. And I think it leaves you on a really good cliffhanger, which is very key, especially for like an early season of a TV show. Is like, why am I coming back next week? Oh, well, I mean, Kat Grant is going to interview Supergirl.
Yeah, what's gonna happen? What's she gonna ask her? Yeah, and I really like the way they did that too, to where Supergirl surprises Kat by lifting up her car and taking her to a remote location so that they could be by themselves and not have to be around any other public area. I
I
thought that was
I
really
feel
cool.
like Kat should have appreciated how overly dramatic that was.
Yeah, so we'll have to rewind to episode 3 to find out what they talk about. What does Kat ask her? I don't know. We'll have to figure that out. But yeah, I like this episode. I think this is a really strong just episode of television in general, and I think the ideas that they planted in this episode, I think for the most part, the people who came in to show run and write after season 1, I think they still tried to maintain some of these ideas, like the El Mayara and the stronger together idea. I like that the stronger together idea was not just Supergirl and the Super Friends. It was also connected to Astra and her Fort Roz escapee buddies. That was also something they were trying to maintain an El Mayara between them. So I thought that was a strong through line throughout the episode. And so I thought that they did a good job of making that sort of thematic throughout the episode. And I also liked, I don't know that I discussed this when Teresa and I talked about it, but the idea that Kara and Alex are sisters, and Astra and Allura are sisters, and they have a discussion about whether or not, Astra maybe believed in Allura believed in Astra, and there was a discussion of whether or not Alex actually believed in Kara. And so I thought the sister connection there, I don't know that I had really made that connection before, that but they had the parallels between them. I thought was really nice.
Yeah, I like the whole explanation of the El Mayara in this episode as well. That the crest isn't just, a thing that her and Clark wear. It's, it stands for, that phrase, and stronger together. And I think she kind of talks about Superman being more of a lone wolf figure, kind of going it alone, and she knows that, like, the way that she stands out is that she doesn't want to do that, and she wants to kind of be surrounded by people, and work with her, her friends and her family. I think that's Supergirl, the TV show, strayed away from Supergirl a little bit, but it did stick to that idea that she wanted to surround herself with people, and she didn't want to be like a lone wolf doing her own superheroing. And she also talks about another thing that differentiates herself from Superman, which I think early on in a Supergirl show, and a lot of people don't have a frame of reference for Supergirl, is pretty smart to be like, this is the way she's different than Superman.
Yeah,
And
I appreciate that.
And she spells it out. She says, James, I think, says, oh, Clark never really talked about Krypton. And she was like, well, he wouldn't have remembered it. He was a baby. Like, I remember it every day. Like, I still have very clear memories of Krypton. And you can kind of see that that she remembers her culture and she remembers her family from Krypton. And I think that's also a through line of season 1, is that, she's having this dramatic fight with her aunt. But like, if we were talking about Superman, like, he wouldn't have remembered if his aunt popped up and she was evil. He'd just be like, oh. But she has actual memories of like spending time with this family member who's now turned bad. So I think it's a smart idea to tie it to something that's different between her and Superman, which is that she remembers Krypton.
And in my opinion, that's why she's a better character than Superman, but that's just me. Maybe a little bit of bias on that.
Controversial.
It's a hot take. But yeah, I think the show did a really good job early on making the show not only about Supergirl, but helping the audience understand what Supergirl's story was and who she was as a character. I don't know that they really cared about that so much later on in the series, but in these early seasons, and especially in season 1, they made a really good effort to differentiate her from Cal and making her story really the focus. And so that's why I like these early seasons. And season one is so great to go back and rewatch, because it feels like a completely different show in a lot of ways. And it's a show I enjoy watching. So I guess we'll have to continue our rewind to see what happens. There are a couple of questions in the chat I thought we could get to real quick before we wrap up our discussion. CM Gautier 74 says, comment about James. When James is being sad on the balcony about possibly losing his job, he lets you know that he doesn't feel unique. Maybe it foreshadowed the creation of Guardian in season 2. Yeah, that's a good question. One I would love to ask somebody about how far in advance they planned the Guardian thing. But yeah, I think James and Jimmy Olsen as a character is always sort of searching for a way to have maybe some, I don't want to say purpose, but having kind of to deal with the fact that he's a sidekick in a lot of ways. And how does he deal with that, where, he's surrounded by all of these superheroes and all these superhero characters all the time. Of course, I would argue that the strength of the James Olsen character, especially on Supergirl, is that he was the everyman. He was the guy who could save the day or do the right thing without having to be a superhero. But I would maybe make that case for several characters on the show. But that is not the direction that they took him in. But yeah, I guess if you wanted to look at it from that angle, it could be foreshadowing of season 2. I just don't know how much of that was intentional. Miss Fiction Fanatic also says, I like El Mayara, but doesn't the S stand for hope in Kryptonian? It does in terms of the Mark Waid version from Birthright. I think is when that originated, that the S shield stood for hope. You can find that in the Superman comics, Superman Birthright. But not all iterations of the character or the Superman family have adopted that. It's now become something that's sort of standard, but Supergirl, the TV series, went a different direction. Do we have any more questions? I guess maybe that is kind of it. I think that sort of wraps up. I think we got all of our questions that I could see in there. So I guess we could just wrap it up here saying that I think we both I think it's fair to say that we both enjoyed this episode.
It's a good one.
Is a good one. And I guess we'll have to find out next time what Kat and Supergirl talk about together in their secret mountainous interview.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
All right. Well, Morgan, do you want to get to a piece of listener feedback that we have?
Sure. Mike from St. Louis sent us an email saying, Hello, favorite highlights of my week. Regarding the recent review of Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow #4, as I listened, I found myself feeling bad for the Kara of Earth X in the Arrowverse crossover. All the other supers get to use the sun as some sort of spa or stress relief, screaming chamber. X Kara went and ended up with a case of nuclear bomb heartburn. Maybe that's what happens when you just get too close, as she stated she did, rather than go all the way in.
Yeah, so I think Mike here is referring to Overgirl, who, if you remember the Crisis on Earth X crossover, she is trying to get Supergirl's heart for herself because her heart is no good and she has to take it from her. And Overgirl is actually one of my favorite villains in all of Supergirl's story in the Arrowverse. She is deliciously evil. So I don't know that I have too much sympathy for her, but Mike is correct that basically she goes up in the air and explodes. So she doesn't have the advantage of using the sun to heal her.
That's true.
Yeah.
I like him referring to the sun as like a stress relief screaming chamber.
Well, that's what they use it for sometimes. So those are all really good points, and gave us a chance to talk about Overgirl again, which I enjoy. So I guess now, Morgan, do you want to get into?
I think we got to do some snap judgments.
In the game of snap judgments, each person is presented with 2 options, but must only choose one. First instincts are recommended, and explanations are unnecessary.
Okay, our first snap judgment is, who was the better villain in this episode, Astra or the Helgermite?
I mean, I would say Astra, although the wire work wasn't as good. Some of the fighting there was not so great towards the end, but I think she was more fun to watch, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Astra too. I feel like she took her opportunity to choose some of the scenery to really she's like, I'm bad, and she really committed to that, and I respect that.
Yeah.
Okay, who would you rather train you as a superhero? James or Wynn?
I think I would go with James because he Wynn was talking in a very technical way, a lot of statistics and math and some physics or something. But James was breaking it down, and he was like, just lift it down gently or let it down gently. So I think I would need somebody to really dumb down things for me. So I'd probably go with James.
Yeah, I feel like Wynn is really useful, but I feel like James is a little bit easier to take in a high pressure situation. I feel like Wynn is going to crumble a little bit, and James has sort of been around the block. He's he knows Superman. He kind of understands the whole deal. He's a grown man, so I think I'm going to go with James on this one too. Okay, our last snap judgment. Would you rather have a heat vision duel or a fight in the air?
This is so tough because
this one is tough.
The heat vision duel, part of it looks cool because it's heat vision, and heat vision always looks cool, but it's kind of, you're not doing anything. You're not making any progress. You're just kind of it's you're just kind of in a what do you call it when nobody is winning the fight, a standstill kind of,
like a holding pattern.
Yeah, so you're not really doing much. So I think I'd probably rather have a fight in midair, even if it didn't look so great, that you're at least doing something. You can see if there's progress, if someone's winning the fight.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think I'm going to go heat vision duel.
Oh, okay.
For the opposite reason. It seems like the lazy person's person's fighting. I can fight, but I don't have to do much but stand. That sounds great to me.
But you have to outlast the other person.
I just have to really glare. I feel like it's really playing my strengths of standing still and glaring. This is sort of how I fight to begin with. So I feel like I'd really crush it.
Okay. All right. So Morgan is going to just try to outlast somebody with heat.
I can outglare anyone.
No judgments, on your snap judgments. I think I jumped the gun. Did I interrupt you?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. I was
I
like,
might have been about
no!
to say something, and I think it went on.
Okay, well, my apologies. I was trying to catch it at the end of a good thought. But thank you for playing a Snap Judgments. Well, I think that's going to do it for our episode discussion of Stronger Together and this episode of Supergirl Radio Rewind. But now I think we need to get to some Supergirl Radio and some DC TV plugs. If you would like to contact Supergirl Radio, you can post a comment on our website at supergirlradio.com. You can email us at supergirlradio@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can call us at 678-718-7252. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram, all at Supergirl Radio. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Podchaser, and Spotify, where we also have a Spotify playlist that includes music featured on and inspired by the CW's Supergirl TV series. We are listed on DC's fan page, which you can find at dccomics.com/DC-fans. If you like what we do, we encourage you to give us a rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our Supergirl Radio live streams, make sure to subscribe to the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and hit that notification bell to get notified when we go live and wired. DC TV Podcast also has a TeePublic store, so if you're in need of new DC TV related t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, onesies, mugs, notebooks, pillows, or stickers, go to supergirlradio.com and click on the TeePublic store link at the top of the page.
Supergirl Radio is part of the DC TV Podcast Network, so if you also like The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Black Lightning, Titans, Doom Patrol, Batwoman, Stargirl, Superman and Lois, and the upcoming Green Lantern, Justice League Dark, and Strange Adventure shows, and DC TV After Dark, you can subscribe to the DC TV Podcast Mega Feed on Apple Podcasts. Follow at DC TV Podcast on Twitter, and like DC TV Podcasts on Facebook, or else. This has been a message from Hope, inhabiting the Flash vessel, also known as New Rachel.
And since we spent time with James and Wynn this week, we have some super friends and even Maxwell Lord designs in the DC TV Podcast TeePublic store.
Yeah, since Wynn is a big fan of Maxwell Lord, I thought we would put him up there as well. So if you're interested in some Super Friends merch, or even if you're a big Maxwell Lord fan, there's probably some out there. We have some Maxwell Lord designs in the DC TV Podcast TeePublic store if you want to go check that out. And we would also like to thank our Legion of Super Sponsors for supporting the Supergirl Radio Patreon. These people are Michael, Sam, Anne Marie, Yvonne, Quinn, Nicola, Leslie, Abby, Ermgard, Miriam, Nicole, Lizeth, Faith, Brian, and Ethan. If you would like to become a Legion of Super Sponsor, you can go to patreon.com/Supergirl Radio. And we have 4 monthly memberships, and we appreciate you helping us keep the lights on through the Supergirl Radio Patreon. And if you would like to keep in touch with me, there are a couple of ways you can do that. You can follow me on the social media platform Vero. I am at Derby Kid. If you follow me there, you will know that I recently watched the classic film Space Camp, starring Leah Thompson and Kate Capshaw. I actually met Leah Thompson this past weekend at the Huntsville Comics and Pop Culture Expo, I think is the official formal title. It's pretty long, but she was there, and she was in Space Camp, the movie Space Camp. And I previously told you about how my brother had gone to space camp.
I know, I remember.
That his mission failed. He made the right decision in the the mission control, but the people inside the space shuttle made the wrong decision, and so his mission failed. So I told Leah Thompson that story, and she wrote I got an autograph from my brother on a space camp picture, and she referenced his
Amazing.
his mission failing. So I got to see Aaliyah Thompson at the Huntsville Comics and Pop Culture Expo, and then I recently watched Space Camp. The premise of that movie. Do you know the premise of that movie, Morgan?
I don't remember it. I don't think so.
So sure, it's an amazing plot. So these kids go to space camp, and then for some reason the space camp people say, hey, let's put the kids in the actual space shuttle.
Sure. Yeah.
And then
no, that makes sense.
And then a robot who has befriended this little small child who cries about how he wants to go to space, and so the robot manufactures a way for him to go to space because he messes with the space shuttle, and these kids from space camp, because they are in the actual space shuttle, are shot into space.
Oh my god.
That's the premise of Space Camp. So they have to find
sounds amazing.
It's actually great.
This has to go on my list now.
You should watch it. Just the premise of this robot named Jinx is hilarious.
They just don't make them like this anymore.
They
really
don't. The plot to that is so insanely stupid that they would put these kids in the actual space.
It's so good.
But it's actually a great movie. It's got like John Williams did the score for it. It's just like, what?
So, I love everything about this.
Yes, you should watch Space
What
Camp.
streaming platform can I find this on?
Well, I found it on YouTube. So
nice.
So I don't know if it's streaming anywhere else, but I'll hook you up so you can watch Space Camp. But you would know that I recently watched that because I posted about it on Vero. If you're following me there, I'm also on Instagram at the Derby Kid. If you want to keep up with my photos and the things I'm doing, you can also follow me and subscribe to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/duckmilkprod. I know I have taken a couple of weeks off from my Batman v Superman Rotten Tomatoes analysis live streams, but I'm getting back to it this weekend. I'm ready to go. And so we're going to get back into some Rotten Tomatoes critical reviews of Batman v Superman and the joy that brings. So we'll be doing that this weekend. So if you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you'll know when I go live, you can do that.
Nice. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Mojotastic. And we are releasing our Drunk Riverdale episode this week. So prepare yourselves. So if you have ever thought to yourself, I love Riverdale, and I would love it if somebody who knows nothing about the show got a little bit tipsy while watching it and then told me what they thought was happening. This is the episode of the Legends of Tomorrow podcast for you. So
excited.
You definitely want to check this one out. It's going to be dropping later this week. And you can also find me on as a co-host of DC TV After Dark, where we are presumably planning our next episode. I say
that's exciting
because we're very loosey-goosey about it. But it's happening someday.
Well, I saw that y'all recently had a Legendary Ladies DC TV After Dark meetup recently.
We did on Sunday. We met Kat around our area. Sarah came to do a photo shoot, a mysterious photo shoot for a Kickstarter project Kat's got going on. You can always just kind of assume Kat's got a Kickstarter project going on.
She does a lot of those.
Always got a safe assumption. And so I came in on the tail end of the photo shoot, and I just got to be there for like the lunch portion of it. So I got to eat and we got some fancy ice cream. We went to this ice cream place in Princeton that always has like really fun flavors. And like when Mike and I first started dating, we went there after like dinner one night, and they had a flavor that I always regret not trying, and it was something like Old Bay and peanuts. I was like,
that doesn't sound appetizing.
Why would you make that an ice cream? And I was like, what would that taste like? And I'll never know what the Old Bay and peanuts. I took my friend Jill there one time, and they had it was like winter time, and they had an ice cream that was just like evergreen. I was like, what does that taste like? Trees? So we all got ice cream.
That sounds amazing. Well, I'm super jealous. That looked like a lot of fun. So I'm glad y'all had a good time. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. But until next time, I'm still Rebecca Johnson.
And I'm still Morgan Glennon. And it looks like those hags at the Daily Planet have some competition now.
McGurk! I love
Not
typing.
mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira. I love that. So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom. Because
she looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Yeah!